So the Lions are still good. The problem is good enough wasn't enough in 2025. Today, going to figure out why and whether this is a quick fix or a longer-term project in Detroit. Welcome back to With the First Pick, doing the perfect fix. And today we are fixing the Detroit Lions. I'm Ryan Wilson, former Titans GM Rand Carthon. Before we go in, Lions fans, let us know how you're feeling about this team. Is this just a Ben Johnson / Aaron Glenn hangover? Were the injuries too much? Because it certainly feels like they were. Or was it something a little more sinister, a little tougher to overcome? Either way, let us know what you think, because I'm curious. All right, Rand. Dan Campbell took over play calling duties from OC John Morton in Week 10. I thought first-year defensive coordinator Kelvin Shepard did a fantastic job while dealing with a ton of injuries. What's the best way forward in terms of the division of labor if you're head coach Dan Campbell and you're trying to replace Ben Johnson? Do you need to go find that guy, or is this going to be your job now and you're going to be the guy calling the plays as well as leading the team?
Well, I think if you're being honest about it, I think you got to move on from John Morton, because it's hard to go back once you've taken play calling away, and particularly if you're the head coach. Dan Campbell has done such a great job in terms of being the CEO head coach when he's had, people to turn it over to. And if you go back at the beginning of his tenure as a head coach there, he's moved on from several offensive coordinators until he, put Ben Johnson in the spot. And so I think it's one of those deals for me in particular where he's going to have to move on from John Morton and then find that next offensive coordinator to come in and kind of help relieve him of the offensive play calling duties and allow him to be what he is, which is a CEO of that football team. And so there are some names I'm going to give you for potential offensive coordinator candidates. If you know anything about Brian Daboll and some of his initial staffs that he's put together, he's had a level of former players on the staff. He loves to have former players on his staff that will allow him, to get the right people in there that understand the players and be able to teach players the fundamentals and techniques. So some former players, and I'll give you one name that's actually been on the Lions staff with Ben Johnson, and he's with Ben Johnson now, is former Ohio State quarterback J.T. Barrett. That would be one name I think they'd be interested in talking to, because also, too, you want to keep uniformity in terms of the scheme. Have someone who has experience within the scheme that you're not making wholesale changes right now. Another name is Nate Shieldhouse, former college quarterback. He's currently the pass game coordinator for the Rams. He got some interest from some teams last year. Has done a couple interviews to be offensive coordinator. So that's a name. Another name is Thad Lewis, the quarterback coach with the Tampa Bay Bucks. Dad is a former NFL quarterback. He's played for a bunch of teams, a bunch of different schemes. But he is a guy that we don't talk about enough in terms of helping develop Baker Mayfield into the player that Baker's come since he's been in Tampa Bay. And then some names that we're more familiar with. Mike Kafka, who's currently the interim head coach of the Giants. You would probably think he would be out of the Giants in terms of who they bring in as their next head coach. Brian Daboll, as a name who's been around, who's been a play caller. I think they should probably talk to him. And then Brian Callahan, who was just relieved of his duties as well with the Titans. He's been an offensive coordinator with the Bengals. And he's also been on the Lions staff prior to Dan Campbell. So I'm sure they have some crossover there and kind of familiar with each other. So that's 6 names I gave you there for potential offensive coordinator candidates. You'll probably hear those names being recycled throughout the process. But those are some quality names I think the Lions should talk to.
No, I love it. That's why we have you, for the lead on your expertise. Also, I'd like to see Dan getting back to being the overseer, so I don't see him on the sidelines with his glasses down like this trying to read the play sheet like he's my grandmother. So I want to see him being tough, eating nails, drinking coffee, Dan Campbell, not my grandma, Dan Campbell, with glasses on. All right. Listen, I'm going to continue leading your front office experience here. I'm going to run through the salary cap numbers. And again, you double check me. You're my fact checker here. And then I'm going to go through some free agents. The Lions currently are number 20 in available salary cap space. They have around 13.6 million, according to my numbers. Again, let me know if I'm right or wrong on that one. And then some of the available free agents on their roster, and they've had a ton of injuries. So I think they've been more injured than any team, all the teams combined, it felt like. DJ Reader Alex Anzalone, who's a playmaker when he's healthy. And Meek Robertson's been really good when he's healthy. Marcus Davenport has struggled to stay healthy. Rock Yassin, the former second-round pick out of the Colts, he had to step in and make some plays down the stretch, and he was pretty good. All those guys are going to be available free agents. Any of those guys worth keeping around with the understanding that you're going to get some other guys back. Brian Branch is coming back off the Achilles, for example. Terry Arnold's battled injuries as well. Any of those guys interest you in bringing them back for 26 and beyond?
What's weird is you can find a spot for all those guys because you look at a guy like Alex Anzalone. He was often injured throughout his career at Florida, played in spots there in New Orleans, but really came into his own with the Lions and was their defensive captain. So you can make an argument for him. A name you didn't mention, Khalif Raymond. Was a guy that they signed, and he's been a dynamic returner for him, a guy that they've been able to use in certain packages of the offense. Maybe there's a role for him. Marcus Davenport's a guy I think you move on from. They hadn't really got much out of him. He's been injured a lot. But a name I want to bring up that we didn't say is Al-Qadim Muhammad, a guy that they got off the street that has made an impact for him. I think you try to figure out a way to bring him back. Now, here's the thing of what the Lions have done a great job of. Brad Holmes has been probably one of the best, I would say, top 5 drafters in all of football. And what they have done a really good job of is drafting really well and then extending their own guys. And so if you look at Brad Holmes' tenure, I think his first year as the GM, he drafted since 2021. He's drafted, how many is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Pro Bowl or All-Pro players. In his 2021 draft, it was Penei Sewell and Amon-Ra St. Brown. In his 2022 draft, it was Aiden Hutchinson and Kirby Joseph. And then in his 2023 draft, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, and Brian Branch. So they're going to continue to live through this draft, be able to develop and re-sign their own. They're heading to the draft this year with 6 total draft picks, a 1, a 2, 2 4s, a 6, and a 7. So if there's anybody who you trust drafting and picking the right players, it's Brad Holmes, it's Ray Agnew, it's Dwayne Joseph, all those guys in that front office that have absolutely crushed it since their time in Detroit. And they've used the Meek Robinsons, the Rock Yassins, and guys like that, and even Al-Qadim Muhammad, guys that they signed throughout the process in terms of free agents to kind of help bring up the rear of that roster or replace those often injured players, and they've done a really good job of that as well.
Yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my guy Chris Spielman as well in that front office. But right, Brad Holmes, every time we talk to Chris, he gives the credit to Brad and Dan and everyone else in that front office. He likes to be on the back burner, so maybe he doesn't like that. But either way, the larger point is also this. You talk about how they find the diamonds in the rough, and we've talked previously about how the Bengals struggle with that sometimes. Amon-Ra St. Brown was a 4th-round pick because he ran in the 4.6s or whatever. Brian Branch went in the 2nd round because he ran a 4.48. They put value on those guys when other teams perhaps didn't quite so high, and it worked out for them. Now, we'll see if Isaac Tesla works out. They traded up a lot to get him in the 3rd round. He's splashed, but it hasn't translated for any number of reasons, but he's not the only reason this team struggled. You talked about the draft picks available in 2026. They're currently picking 15th. The Lions are. So let's play the game. I'm going to give you a name. You tell me who is the biggest immediate impact through the draft in terms of helping this team right away. Edge rusher Keldrick Falk out of Auburn. Freakish athlete, still raw. Offensive lineman Caden Proctor. Freakish athlete, questions about his weight. Or cornerback Mansour Delane out of LSU, who is not the highest end athlete. He ain't Patrick Surtain the second, but he makes plays week in and week out this season for LSU. Which one of those guys, if you're Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, Ray Agnew and company, is going to come in and help set the tone for what this team should be doing in 2026?
Well, I'll say they've spent a ton of resources at the corner position, right? You took Terrion Arnold in the 1st round. You signed DJ Reed to a nice deal. They spent a ton of resources there. You kind of move Brian Branch around. You play him in a bunch of different spots, safety, nickel. So you use a lot of resources there. But if you're giving me either Keldrick Falk and who was the other?
Caden Proctor, Alabama left tackle, who can play. You can move him around if you need to.
So that's the trick, right? So if it's Caden Proctor, is it now do you move Penei Sewell? Do you leave Penei Sewell at right, keep Caden Proctor at left? And then you also have to figure out what you have to do with your current Pro Bowl left tackle who is getting up there in age and kind of been banged up.
And Taylor Decker has talked about potentially retiring, so that's also maybe that plays into the math.
So I think if you're the Bengals, why do I keep saying the Bengals? If you're the Lions, I think right now you probably got to go get that other edge rusher opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. So whomever that is, whether it's Keldrick Falk, whether it's David Bailey, one of those guys. The one thing I could tell you, if you look at a Brad Holmes draft, and particularly guys that they take on the front end, they take football players. And like you mentioned with the Amon-Ra St. Brown, the Brian Branch, those guys, scouts were, I don't know how fast they are. I don't know if they have the speed to play at this level. And what Brad Holmes and his staff has done a really good job is not only identifying the play speed, which is what matters most, the play speed, but guys that just instinctively know how to play the game, and their instincts allow them to play quicker and faster than what their time speed would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Lions fans, let us know what you think. Like, which player are you looking for in the middle of the first round to be the biggest impact immediately on a Lions team that honestly was so banged up by injuries? It's amazing they won as many games as they did. All right, this is the Jim Mora playoff section of the conversation. This feels pretty straightforward to me. I know we have to figure out the coordinator positions. Like I mentioned, Kelvin Shepherd, I thought, did a pretty good job in year one after Aaron Glenn. John Morton, not so much, and we have to figure that out. But this team, when healthy, feels like they're a Super Bowl team because that's exactly what they were in August. How comfortable do you feel in announcing right now that this team in 2026 is going to indeed be a deep team to make a playoff run?
No, I think they are. I think they are prime. This was my preseason pick to be to be the Super Bowl team.
Yeah.
I thought they would represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. Now, here's the trick. The NFC as a whole in and of itself is really loaded. We're seeing three teams out in the NFC West that could potentially be 12-win teams in one division. All three are making the playoffs. And even in this NFC North right now, where you have Chicago, you have Green Bay, you have Minnesota, you have Detroit. All four of those teams are super competitive, and it could potentially be three playoff teams out of there. We're in a space right now with the NFC where there is a scenario moving forward. Obviously, if people stay healthy and all things shape up the way they're supposed to, that you can have a 10 or 11 win team not make the playoffs. Particularly coming out of the NFC West and the NFC North. So this is going to be good. These are going to be good fights for the NFC North, for Detroit, for Green Bay, for Chicago, for Minnesota moving forward. But I do think the way the Lions are currently constructed, the amount of talent they have coming back, if they stay healthy, them as much as anybody else could really push to be not only a playoff team, but a Super Bowl contender next year.
Yeah, and I think the lesson, fair or not, is that you have to have a lot of luck in terms of staying healthy, because if you don't stay healthy, then you're really up against it. The Packers are sort of figuring that out now down the stretch here in the regular season as well in that division. All right, Lions fans, let us know what you think here. Is this team close? I know fans get frustrated with successful organizations, even those that were historically not successful, and I know fans have voiced their anger at Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell. Feels crazy to me, but I'm curious what you guys think, because it's the beginning of a new year. Be grateful, and I think things will turn around. Let us know what you think, though, because I am legitimately curious.